Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the rebranded version of this podcast. So it is now the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast, and I'm your host, Andrew Coates. And if you're listening and going, well, wait a second, what the hell is going on with the Fitness Devil? And this is not the first episode of that stream. It's on the same podcast download stream. And for 150 episodes, me and my good friend, Dean Guido, we hosted the Fitness Devil podcast. But Dean's life is getting, busy and his projects are adding up. So he asked that I take this over solo while he focuses on his side podcast. It's now his main, The Pump with Jeb Stewart-Johnston. And I'll answer a little bit more about that. But first, in relaunching this and rebranding a bit, I wanted to bring back our most popular guests, some of our biggest hitters. So I figured we start with the person who quantifiably has the largest amount of downloads in a single episode, well over 10,000. So my friend Sohee, welcome back.
Hello. I feel very honored. I feel like this is I don't know why you chose me, but I'm happy to be here.
We've talked.
That's very defeatist. That's very defeatist language, and it's something I'm working on with my therapist, so I should not have said that. I retract that statement. I am very happy to be here.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because how many people do you meet? Do you pay them a compliment and their immediate default response is to sort of deflect or think that there's somehow not of it? And
I was taught to do that. I was taught that it was rude to accept, just point blank accept a compliment. I was actually taught it was more polite to turn down food when you were offered food or drink. You had to turn it down. It was rude to accept. I don't know where we learned these things, but they're backwards.
I think anyone of a Ukrainian background or a lot of European background, it would be very much the opposite. Or I think Hispanic backgrounds, you refuse food, that's very rude.
Yeah. Now I'm like, yes. Very happy to.
Oh, it's great to have you on. You and I have talked before a bit about this, and I originally discovered you. One of the reasons why we do this podcast is a lot of trainers, a lot of fitness professionals follow it, and it's a great way to introduce them to a lot of the great people in the industry. Now, you're more widely known, you're well known in the industry now, but I once upon a time found you because you were on the Physique Science Radio podcast with Layne Norton, who I had followed for a really long time. So that's where I found you, and then started following more of your stuff, reading your work, following your social media. Met you. It's about 3.5. It's like
I think maybe 2016 or maybe the year later. I don't know when. It was around then, 4 years ago.
Exactly right. And then it's also something I like to talk about a lot is how if you go to fitness events, first of all, go to them because you'll actually meet people like mine.
Oh, they're great. Yeah.
You also meet the people that you've been following for a really long time, and I'd say 2/3 of our podcast guests I've met through these type of events, and everybody's really down there. They get the occasional exception who's a bit of a jackass, but almost everybody else is just really cool. And you never know where these sort of things can lead. So
yeah.
You're in Spain. Yeah. So obviously, we're still
things I thought I'd never be doing this year. Huh. Yeah.
Ended up in the accidental jet set lifestyle.
Yes, it was completely unplanned. And given a lot of it is not necessarily entirely within our control. So, my boyfriend, Ben Carpenter, who I'm sure a lot of people already know and follow, has amazing content and is the best human. Anyway, that's not the point of this podcast, is it? So we were in California at the beginning of this year. But because he is a UK citizen, he can only stay for 9 days at a time. So we knew that come late March that we'd have to leave at some point and then we thought, well, we'll be out of the country for a few months and then obviously come back in. Because I have an apartment in LA, I've got a lease there, I've got 2 dogs, my family's nearby and so on. And we were starting to, just get settled in, form our new friend groups and so on. Because I had just moved there myself as well. But also, as we know, that's when COVID-19 hit really hard. February, late March especially. And then everyone, basically, it felt like the whole world went into lockdown. So we ended up staying we were in England. We were there for longer than we thought we would have to be. And even now, we thought we'd be back in the country by this point. But given that, especially the US, has still a lot of travel restrictions and whatnot, foreign travelers from countries like Europe and, not countries, like places like Europe and UK cannot enter the US, which is why we're in Spain for the time being. So we've been here for about a month at this point. So we left England to come here once they formed their air bridge, and we could come here without having to quarantine for 14 days. And life here, so we're in Marbella area, and life here is actually it feels pretty normal, besides just having to wear a mask when you're, in public. But gyms are open, restaurants are open. We can actually do a lot more here than we could back in England. So that has been a nice change. So we don't know how long we'll be here, but I think trying to stay positive. We both work from home, quote unquote. So we're fortunate to be able to still make money living basically anywhere in the world, which is why we're able to do this. So obviously we're very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, have no idea when we're going to be back in the US, hopefully sooner rather than later. But given how the year's been going, it's hard to say.
Yeah, this has been masks, and we just had, I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, so our city just announced that in all public places, you have to wear a mask. So if you're working out in a gym, it's an exception. So that's going to be an adjustment. I actually ordered some face shields, and so I actually thought about this, right? And this is actually a big pet peeve of mine, is our industry is obsessed with arguing about masks. So number one, I think that's a really stupid waste of your time. And I actually think for all you guys, think about this. It's sort of out of your scope. Traders love to fuck around with shit that's inside your scope. Well, what I actually see a lot of it is condescending, shaming sort of stuff out of, a lot of people, some who are really, really great people. And I see that stuff, and that stuff just rubs me the wrong way, because I'm not sure anybody's really in love with the idea of wearing a mask. And again, you have a following, you have your clientele or whatever. We're probably going to represent a fairly broad spectrum of thoughts. And so my thoughts are, guys, focus on the fitness stuff. Focus on the stuff that your people want to hear. And if you're arguing with each other about masks, especially if it gets really ugly, no, I think everybody loses there. I mean, we've got to deal with it. It's the way the world is right now. And, eventually it'll go away. And I figured out a solution. I'm just going to wear a face shield. So that way I don't have this like tight fitting cloth. Now I'll have masks just in case, I don't have a face shield. I got to go in certain types of places. But I figured if I'm going to be working, half my day at Evolve, hey, I think this is a perfect solution. Actually, it's a better protective barrier anyway. So fuck it, right? So that's out there.
Yeah.
I would ask you about, the ability to keep your business going while you were working on the road. A lot of people have this dream of, I want to be fully online and travel the world. Well, you're doing it kind of accidentally, but you make it sound like it isn't all cracked up to be.
So I will say that I think being on the road as much as I have been this year is definitely, I think, is overrated, because I am like a total homebody. I love my routine. I love my bed, my couch, my kitchen, everything. And to not have those things, and every time you go to a new hotel or apartment to stay in, you have to adjust to whatever they have available for you. So that, is not ideal. And then obviously missing people and pets and so on that you have like a home, that can be tough for sure. But first thing I will say about, yes, I do think a lot of people, maybe they fantasize about one day I want to work from home and make my full-time business, I can be on my couch the whole time or whatever. And that usually means being independent, right? Owning your own business, or maybe you're working for someone else, but again, working from home. And I think the thing to realize with that, because I definitely have come across people who have found that they actually hate, or they either strongly dislike, or they're not well suited for the work from home lifestyle, where let's say, for example, if you have to get back to clients via email in a timely manner, they really struggle to do that. It's like pulling teeth for them. Or if they have to have like lots of Zoom meetings, hate that. They'd rather do like face-to-face stuff, or, so I think the online business, and I'm just going to say, for the sake of this episode, talking specifically about businesses, although I'm sure it applies to a lot of other industries. I think running an online business is definitely not for everyone. And I also think, and that's by that same token, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. So, yeah, I have been running my online business for 8.5 years now. I have lived in numerous different states across the US during that time, from Northern California, where I was still in college when I started my business, to New York, Connecticut, Georgia, everywhere. And, every time it was a matter of, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what your time zone is, the principles of working from home are the same. Are you getting your projects done in a timely manner? Are you getting back to your clients or whoever needs you in a timely manner, and doing what you need to do? Because there's not going to be people hovering over your shoulder necessarily making sure that you're doing your work and keeping you accountable. So can you be accountable to yourself? Even if you are staying somewhere that feels like a vacation, can you make sure you get what you need to do? Do your work first before you go out and have your fun. Yeah, I think that can be kind of tough for some people to do. And it's not always fun, honestly. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could take a week or 2 weeks fully off my business. That's not really an option right now.
I don't think a lot of people, like in the world we're in, we really don't get that option. Maybe you're someone like, a Dr. Mike Isertel builds up RP, have a great team.
Right. Yeah.
This entity with great people underneath you who run a lot of the stuff. And then sure, you can turn around. And I'm not really sure Mike ever really does take a full week off anywhere. I think he just hangs out in his pajamas watching Dragon Ball Z. Earlier, that's Mike for you. And they're a great organization, but not everybody gets to build up something of that level. Maybe again, you get your John Berardi, who we recently had on, the previous incarnation of the episode. It's going to be funny when I say, oh yeah, we used to have this person on, but hey, this is episode number 1. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah.
So John Berardi was on, and he's really still very much a figurehead for precision nutrition, but he's really stepped away from it, and he's getting involved in other things now. But John also, he's not the norm. He's the exception. He's a founder and a very, very high-profile example of success in our world.
Yeah, I think it really depends too on when you are starting out as an entrepreneur, let's say in fitness. Do you want to be known as an individual? Like, does Andrew Coates want to be known as Andrew Coates, or do you want to be part of a business that you have helped found that you're not necessarily face of? Kind of like, PN, Precision Nutrition, kind of like RP that Mike Israel is, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know, hey, did you know that Mike is actually one of the main guys behind RP? Because that's not necessarily who you think of. Or like maybe there's not really a person you associate RP with at all, because the brand kind of stands, by itself, doesn't have someone's face on it. Whereas like me, for example, Sohee Fit, a lot of people know me as like Sohee Lee or Sohee Fit. So I am my brand. So I think that is an important distinction to make. And I think, obviously both avenues have their pros and cons, but I think the one of the drawbacks of the way that I did it is, it is hard to take time off, can be hard. And when you potentially when you hire other people to help with your business, it can be hard, especially if everyone like wants to work with you, because you are your brand, right? Anyway, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind.
Pete Dupuy, we've had him on a few times, and he virtually every podcast he ever does, he mentions how all these parents, because Pete does all the sales, and so for Cressy Sports Performance, the parents, 12, 13-year-old kids who think their kid's going to be the one who makes the big show. It's like, yeah, so when do I get to work with Eric? Or I want to talk to Eric.
Right, yeah.
Well, actually, Eric is in Florida. And Eric is also now the strength conditioning coach, director of, I'm not sure the exact title, of the New York Yankees. So, I'm sorry, but your 12-year-old's probably not getting any, one-on-one time with Eric Cressy. And he, using the example of like putting your name on the business, he's talked repeatedly about how much he sort of regret having done that.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's hard to realize that until years down the road. And then you look back, and you're like, I wish, thinking more like long-term, where do you ultimately want to be? But sometimes you don't really know. Sometimes you don't know where you want to end up or how you want your business to look like in 5 years or 10 years from now.
It's a great problem to actually discover that.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't think anybody who's in that position is going to be really upset that they wound up in that position. I also find with names that most of the people in our industry who are very well known, they use their name as their brand. I notice a lot of trainers use, especially with their Instagram accounts, they use a business name that's separate. Now, you know, everybody likes to find their business name, but I do find personally a lot of those names sound very generic, and you don't then, like, I'll follow certain accounts and I can't always remember who is the person that I know by name who has that business name. And sometimes it's just a personal trainer's business. It's not yeah. And my thoughts on that one are kind of tough because it's like, shit, you stand out more as an individual, right? So if the goal is brand growth and reach and helping more people, I'm almost biased towards using your name if you are in fact a trainer. If you're building up something like a company, like, again, we use Precision or RP, then I think, yeah, that's the other way. But I suppose it's also fair to say if Precision Nutrition and Renaissance Periodization were two of the biggest companies in the space in the world in this, then, and let's say some trainer opened up Renaissance training in their gym, it wouldn't have any meaning to it. So its meaning is also because of its success. So looking back at it, we know what it is. Therefore, like, oh yeah, it's Renaissance Periodization. So, but I kind of prefer, you know, following fitness professionals who go by their own name as their brand first.
Yeah. I think, you know, despite some of the difficulties that come with being your own brand, I do ultimately prefer it this way because, yeah, I think for me, my platform and the message that I send across and the things I talk about do tend to be a lot of times, you know, somewhat personal in that they are oftentimes a reflection of like what I am learning or what I believe or what I'm going through, stuff like that. And I also find that followers can feel a lot more connected to you and your brand as a person. And that connection can be really invaluable.
Do you think that, I mean, I think I know the answer is, do you feel like your followers are more connected to you the last, say, 5-6 months or whatever, because you've really pivoted in a lot of ways? And if someone wants to go into the depths of kind of the catalyst of all that, you've talked about that, on the podcast with Jill Coleman and Danny J, and I think that's a known thing. But you've got your relationship with Ben, and that's something that you now showcase. You're a lot more open about who you are. You smile and you're having fun and everything in ways that you just was never.
That's new.
But it's true. And anyone
you
would know. So there's been a dramatic shift, but I think the best way to put it is you've been a lot more of your own personality. You've said it as much versus kind of just that very polished professional.
Yeah, and I think it's like, it's not that it's not that I'm a different person now. I think it's just more, I have less of a wall that I put up. And don't get me wrong, I'm still very, very private in many, many ways. Like, I am the kind of person who would be terrified if my home address was public, for example. I'm just so private in that regard. But I feel like I have the space to really be myself more. And, being around people who actively encourage that has been huge for it. And it hasn't been funny. I've gotten so many messages from people saying, you look like, it's night and day. You look so much happier now. And I'm also starting to be a lot more open about my own struggles, like mental health struggles and so on. And that resonates with so many people. I actually just did some stories on it yesterday, and I was so overwhelmed with, I don't know that I've ever gotten this many story replies in my life as long as I've been on Instagram, that I think I only opened one. I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I don't even know where to begin. So I think that resonates with a lot of people and helps them, feel less alone. And I people say, like, it's nice to see someone with a big following openly talk about something that is so stigmatized. And yeah, that's been pretty cool.
Well, one of my best friends, Sarah, so she started following you on my recommendation, and so she loves your stuff. And she actually mentioned that very specifically. I told her you were coming on as the first guest of the rebrand.
Aww.
And she mentioned the stuff, how she likes how you're being more open about the mental health stuff. And you've always been open about, the history, the past with disordered eating behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Like that for sure. But it didn't really go much beyond that. And the point
I,
about
like, I find the eating disorder stuff very easy to talk about now in comparison to even though technically like anorexia and bulimia are technically like forms of, you know, mental health
absolutely
struggles, specifically talking about like depression, or even if it's not depression, you know, anything that you're struggling with, that I find more difficult for sure.
with the mental health stuff, I mean, it is getting talked about a bit more in the industry. You can sometimes notice that there are people who go the other end of the spectrum where they dive into it to the point where it's like, you know, oh, there's being vulnerable, and then there's obviously being really using it as a tactic and a ploy, and it's
Yeah, and I don't want to be like that. Yeah.
there's nothing to be further from the truth. Like, yours is always authentic, whatever you're doing. But have you found that, you know, the engagement has grown to another level since, you know, you're showing more of your life and more of those sides of you?
Um, yeah, I would say so. I think my DMs, for example, are a lot more active than they used to be. Just because, like, you know, when you're all you're doing is educating, which I think is obviously fantastic. Sometimes there are a lot of people who would follow you for your content, but might not necessarily find a reason or feel the need to like reach out to you personally, right? They're like, oh, I'm just here to consume your free content. I have nothing to say to you, actually. But when I'm like, you know, I think I have depression. I've had it for a very long time, blah, 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 blah. People are like, oh my God, me too. And you know, stuff like that. So yes, I do think it has been good. But again, like my goal is never to exploit any of that kind of stuff. And I still want to very much keep my platform primarily education based.
I think there's something to this as well. A lot of people who are really successful in our space, they can seem very superhuman. And that can be a barrier to relatability, especially for the upcoming coach and trainer who's, you know, trying to scrape it out. And look what COVID did right now. I think COVID sort of, I don't know how to find the right words when it comes to like economic stuff, but I think it's created a bit of a divide, an even wider divide between the very successful, who are very established and they're going to be fine. And you obviously have these newcomers into the industry who are passionate about it and they don't quite know what they're stepping into. But I feel like the middle, that group that, you know, on a good day, they're always kind of worried about, you know, oh, if they're going to be able to keep their clients, if they're going to be able to make enough money. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but we haven't had a lot of good days the last 5 or 6 months in terms of optimal, you know, environment for trainers. So I feel like that particular tier of trainers are going to flee the industry really aggressively, and I'm already seeing it, right? So I feel like you're getting this almost like economic split between the haves and the have-nots, and I think it's sort of growing in a sense. I think the industry will rebound, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for new and the people who are passionate about it but haven't really had enough time with the everyday struggle to have been scared the hell out of the industry. So we got that, but I think that superhuman tier can be seen as really, oh, I could never achieve that. You know, I could never reach that point. Like, I definitely remember what it felt like. You know, I talk about this a lot. I used to read T Nation every morning. That's what I still do. You know, just see all the people that, you know, have been guests on the podcast that I've met in my travels, and think about this tier of people that will, oh, that's unattainable. You know, never, you know, I could never reach that. And all of a sudden, you know, a year and a half of writing for T Nation and hosting a conference and having a lot of people, you know, like that speak and having them on the podcast. And the point of that message is not to, quote, brag about what I've managed to do. It's to say to anyone else who is hungry to do that or would love to, it's totally attainable. You have to put a lot of time and work into it. And you've got to go out and make these, you know, connections and relationships. You've got to write. You've got to create content consistently. But it is absolutely attainable. So going back to that, the superhuman sort of quality, are there any sort of less than superhuman things that, you know, you struggle with that people don't necessarily get to see, or, you know, as people feel this really big cumulative success from their point of view? I mean, you may still feel like you have a lot to accomplish, but, you know, they don't necessarily see the struggles or the failures or whatever. And so I was sort of curious about the stuff that you do as attitude, as habit, as behavior that gets you through those struggles. And it's probably the same stuff that built you up to where you are in your career anyway.
So I will say that Yes, you're right. I think anyone who has, most people who have achieved a high level of success in this industry, barring a few exceptions who, again, they are exceptions, have been at doing what they've been doing for a very long time. They've simply been extremely consistent over years and years and years and years. And yeah, it's very easy to see someone with a large following whose business is doing really well and being like, I don't know how that person got there. I'll never get there. When in reality, there's a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes. They're probably working their ass off you don't see how much they're working, because not everyone's posting, oh my God, guys, I worked this many hours today, or like, here are all the things that I'm doing, that you guys, in the background and so on. And I think for me, I wanted to be very clear on what my long-term mission was, even if the the manifestation of my brand kind of does evolve over time. I'm okay with that, because I know I'm going to be changing over time and learning more, and maybe over the years I'll change my viewpoint on certain matters, and hopefully I would hope I am. Actually, I think that's a sign that you're growing as a professional. And even in the past 6, 7, 8 months, my brand has shifted a little bit as well, but the underlying mission has always been the same, which is to educate the masses, help clear up a lot of the fitness misconceptions, and help them not make the mistakes that I made all in my own fitness journey, and be able to work fitness into their lives in a way that enhances their overall quality of life, rather than detracting from it. And so keeping that in mind, it's been and then also finding the overlap between what's going to accomplish that, as well as what do I enjoy doing with my time that's going to help people, and whatever that overlap is, doing that in a way that will in many ways ends up being free content or free work, but also there are some avenues for making revenue and so on. And for many years I did a lot of online coaching as well as in-person coaching. And in recent years, has started to shift a little bit more toward, even though I have a few clients of my own still, shifting more towards focusing more on educating on a larger scale, educating other people on a larger scale. It's just what I love more. And I think when I remember like what my ultimate goal is and what my ultimate mission is, that is what keeps me going. That's not to say that like I don't have days where I just, especially with the mental health stuff, not to say that I don't have days when nothing, barely anything gets done, right? And all I can do is like pop into my Facebook group with my clients and answer a few posts and then be done for the day. Because that does happen, but that's more the exception, not the norm. So yeah, and setting up systems over time with my business, trying to be more efficient as hiring, help when I don't have the hands to do everything on my own, and so on. All of that's been really good.
You've hired a team. You mentioned that earlier, and so Myra is one of your team, and she and I chatted over Instagram. She's great. She's
wonderful.
Really wonderful. So throw a shout out to her. I'm sure she'll be listening to this. But so when you are reducing the actual one-on-one client load that you're working with directly, people can still coach under your systems and the coaches that you have. I mean, they come in with their own education, but you certainly train them and built a philosophy behind how you want all your coaches to work with, so that every coach is going to have their own individual way of doing things, but there's still got to be some reasonable framework and consistency. So people can still work with the people who are really close to you and get that quality of experience.
Yeah. And I think, that's what I wanted to do, because, I got to a certain point where the demand for people wanting to work with me was very high, which obviously was happy with, but I was also starting to feel overwhelmed. I knew that if I took on too many clients, then I would start to feel burnt out, and the quality of my coaching would drop. I wouldn't enjoy what I was doing as much anymore, and that's not good for them either. And so, I said, there are people who have been asking to work for me and so on. So the demand for that is there as well. So I started hiring, and I'm very slow to hire. Speaking of Myra, she'll laugh if she hears this, but I was so reluctant to hire a coach that I interviewed her 6 times, 6 times before I hired her.
It says a lot about her to persevere through that and just.
Oh yeah, she's yeah. I can't say enough good things about her. But yeah, it's been almost 2 years she's been with me now, in a coaching capacity, and she helps with some like assistant work as well. She does a lot of my graphic designs and so on, and other projects. But yeah, I wanted to find people who had the same mission that I did, who obviously weren't just in it for the likes, the followers, the money, anything like that. And something I had to learn recently, or in recent years, was also had to be a good personality fit with the team, right? Because what I've learned is, all it takes is one bad apple who butts heads to ruin the dynamic for everyone. And that is enough to keep me up at night, where I can't sleep because I'm so upset and anxious about why, there's tension here, there's this happening. So yeah, I have had to do that, but it has been cool. I've got three coaches now working under me, Rachel, Myra, and Brian, first male coach, and hoping to take on maybe one or two more by the end of this year. But it's been really fun. The having the team dynamic, that's something that you don't get, obviously, when you're a one-man operation. And that's been really fun, especially when we have our meetings and so on. And given that everyone's in different places, all the meetings obviously happen online. But even so, it's really fun and adds a level of, I think, enjoyment and satisfaction that you kind of don't get when you're doing things by yourself. And also, obviously, it's good to like bounce ideas off each other and so on.
This is something we're seeing a bit more of now, and I think COVID may actually be accelerating it. A lot of my industry friends have been looking for the stability and are comfortable with the idea of working as part of an organization. So Stronger You is one of the really popular ones.
Yeah.
Mike's great. I'm going to bring him on in the near future. He's already excited to come on. And there's a lot of people who are looking for jobs with companies like Stronger You and Macros Inc., Jay Weiss Company.
Yeah.
They love to get in with Renaissance Periodization, but they pretty much only hire people with master's level or PhD.
You know what? Good for them. I mean, I'm not quite to that level, but for the most part, I do have like some level of standard. And even though we know formal education is not everything, but it is something. Right? Yeah, so good for them.
I mean, they do hire people who don't technically have that for various different things. Our friend Carolyn McDonald, she works for them now, and she's loving it. She's an important part of their support and structure, but she's not, one of their coaches either. Anyway, so you're seeing more and more of these trainers that are feeling comfortable with the idea of being part of a greater brand identity.
Yeah.
A lot of trainers think, they have to grow their own and be successful with their own name, and it's really okay to go this other road. And
yes.
the right kind of personality fit. Now, every once in a while, someone like our friend Derek Stanley, he
branched off.
Yeah, he branched off and is doing his own thing, and he's just one of the nicest, most awesome guys ever. And
great guy, yeah, agreed.
Passionate about what he does. We all got to hang out together in Texas, in Dallas.
That was a really fun time.
That was really fun. Yeah, you invited me to meet Lane for the first time, and Brad Feld was there, and I met.
That's right.
Who was wonderful.
Yeah.
And Newmeyer. These are all great people, and just this little, what is it? God, what's the company? It's It's one of
Dymatize?
Dymatize, thank you.
Yeah.
The little Dymatize thing, and Eric Lee Salazar and some of his friends were there, and Derek drove an hour to meet up with us, and yeah, that was fun. So go to stuff like this. If you get the chance to do this stuff, you'd never believe, what can come out of it. But yeah, Derek is stepping out on his own, but.
I talked to him, pretty recently. He's doing really well, it seems like.
He is doing really well. He just put up a post. He actually tagged me in it and copied one that I put up recently because I took a photo. I had a photo taken based on Carolyn and another friend of mine's urgings. Okay, you need to have a profile photo that doesn't make you, like, I had this one sleeveless, looking shredded. And I'm not a competitive bodybuilder by any stretch, but it looks like that bodybuilder men's physique sort of photo. And with my social media following growing actually quite quickly, very few of my clients are the type of young guy who wants to put on muscle. I deal with people of all ages, young athletes, older adults.
Yeah, right.
And, outside of the T Nation writing, which is for the Jack Bro types, most of the rest of my stuff isn't geared towards that image. Meanwhile, that's the first thing people are seeing. So as soon as someone mentioned, I'm like, shit, you're right. I got to get rid of this blank photo. And so I went with something that was a little bit more soft and everyday. And I wrote up this post along with it, all these things that, about me that people didn't necessarily know. And people went completely bananas on it. So Derek turned around and copied it, tagging me.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah.
People went nuts.
Those are fun. I enjoy, I think from a follower perspective, I actually do find myself, I do enjoy reading those about other people whose pages I like following, because it's like, oh, I get to learn more about you in a way that I normally don't. Yeah, it is fun.
Witcher, anyone who's actually watching the video of this, because I am planning on doing these on YouTube now, my Witcher figurines, Geralt's up there, and I love The Witcher. And so, and I put that up on my social media. There's a few other aspects, but there's a lot of stuff that people don't know, so I should share more. But it goes into you sharing more of you on your social media more.
Yeah. It is funny, like when you share like the TV shows that you like to watch, or like your pets. People love Ollie and Jelly. The food that I'm eating lately, that kind of stuff. People like it.
It's something that they share with you. Like when I, pictures of my cat Ozzy, then I get more inbox stuff than anything else.
Yeah, right.
It's all these women, they just love Ozzy, and he's cute, so cool. But sorry, you can't have him. I'm keeping him. I'm rather fond of him.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, we danced around sort of content creation. One of the things that you do really well is, you take a lot of pretty straightforward stuff and you put it out, make it really accessible. And I think a lot of coaches struggle with where do I come up with ideas? How do I create content? I think they're all afraid to say the everyday stuff that they feel like has been said 1,000 times. And, you create new and interesting ideas, but a lot of your stuff is not, earth-shatteringly,
it doesn't need to be
novel. It's actually, it's just well put together basic concepts. And you're doing it constantly, and you've been doing it for years. Yeah. So obviously that doesn't go out of style, but these coaches are afraid of doing it. So do you want to explain kind of that?
Yeah. So I think there's the mentality, and I think I'm fortunate in many ways, because I feel like when I first started out my business, I wasn't planning on doing what I'm doing now. It wasn't, this is my 8-year plan, whatever. It was more like, well, I have some extra time. I enjoy doing this. Let's see if I can start a blog and see what happens. And well, if I'm going to be collecting money, then I have to have, I have to form an actual business. So here's my LLC. And then one thing, just leads to another, and ta-da. But one thing that I did have going for me that I think would actually serve me really well was, I was a little bit naive in that I didn't have any of the doubts and fears that a lot of people have when they start out as entrepreneurs. Like, what if I fail? What if no one buys my product? I never had any of that. It was like, oh, my ebook's done. Hey guys, it's done. And then however many sales I got, I'd be like, woo, yay. And then, there's none of the anxiety, none of the doubting, none of it. And even with like the amount of revenue I made every month, I was like, whatever I make, cool. Oh, that's awesome. Cool. If I go down, I don't care. Next month is better. Great. So in that way, it was like, I didn't have the like mental resistance and so on that I know a lot of people struggle with. And when it came to creating content, I really just started out with, well, what am I interested in that I think will help other people, right? And as I kept coaching people, and I worked with more clients. And by the way, that's where you can get a lot of your ideas, is through conversations with clients and the questions that they ask you. Is you keep seeing, you keep noticing the same things coming up over and over and over. And I noticed from my perspective as well, when I'm, following other people's content and so on, sometimes I notice it'll take 4, 5, 6 times for me to see the same message for it to really sink in. And so that's when I realized, you know what, one, people aren't doing enough of the basics in fitness. So we need to be constantly reminding them of that. And even though maybe for people like us, certain concepts may seem very obvious and, simple and so on, to a lot of people, it's not. And we're not reaching enough of those people, of the general population, who are not necessarily fitness minded, or they're new to fitness. So when I say, oh, like, this is obvious to me, I'm like, who cares? It's not obvious to your aunt, to your grandma, to your uncle, to your cousin. They need to know this stuff too. And so I think, maybe I make a video on topic and it resonates with some people, but not with others because they're not video people, or they're just not at the point in their lives when they're ready to be receptive to my message. So if I do it again in 2 months in the form of an infographic, maybe they're like, oh, I get this. Or maybe I do a funny meme with the same message, like, oh, now I get it. Now it clicks, So yeah, I'm always like very intentionally repeating the same messages over and over. And by the way, if you want to build a strong brand, you should be repeating the same messages over and over. You can't just always change what you're saying. I think that's how you build the base of the foundation of a very strong brand is solid, consistent messaging, whatever that is. So I do that all the time. And then over time as well, that can slightly change and so on. Because, what I was saying 6 years ago is not necessarily what I'm recommending now today,
You said it in there. There's new people, there's new entrants to fitness all the time. There's the woman who finally reached the point where she wants to get off the yo-yo dieting train, and she's found someone like you who's got a better approach, and she's a new follower. Well, yeah. She's not going to scroll to the bottom of your feed and read, no. 5 years worth of infographics and posts. She's going to see the thing you post today and tomorrow and so on.
Right.
And people, God, I mean, if only we gave a piece of information once, it clicked, and then someone got nutrition right for the rest of their lives. We know that
right.
works. People pay for, 2 hours a week coaching constantly just to be held accountable and refreshed. So the same message over and over is still resonating with and helping people who've seen it on your feed 100 times. So there's no reason to be afraid of being competitive. And I found that with some of my stuff, it's kind of a half and half of things that, is perspective that a lot of people haven't been seeing. But then a lot of the stuff I've been posting is very routine, very, very, old, maybe said with my own words, but it's resonating with people. I'm like, you guys have heard this 100 times, but yet for some reason or other, the time it grabbed onto someone.
But maybe it's not just that people who maybe it's not just your potential customers and your readers want to learn from you. A lot of it too is your colleagues see what you've written. They're like, I like the way he's articulated this. I'm going to share it because his sentiments echo mine, but maybe he did a better job of saying it than I did, or it's just another variation. I'm going to share that too. So that's another angle to think of it. But I do think that there's a lot of value in not overthinking those things too much. Like, obviously, you want to have carefully thought out posts, right? If your caption is full of typos and so on, you don't want that. You don't want like a half-baked thought. Be intentional and be thorough, but don't overthink it to the point where you're like, it's not perfect, I'm never gonna post it. Because sometimes, I have had times when I've made videos and stuff where I'm like, you know what, like, I don't love the lighting in this video, but I don't really have the opportunity to refilm it necessarily, and I think it's still better if I post it anyway, because it'll still help some people, right? Like last year, or maybe the year before, I did a video for my YouTube on how to calculate your dieting numbers, and people love that topic. They want to know, like, what are my dieting numbers and so on. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna make a video. And I wore these glasses, and the ring light reflection, I didn't notice till after everything. It was like you could see the yellow rings in the glasses the whole video. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, you know what? I don't want to refilm this, but what I will do is make a joke about it in the first line of my caption. Totally. And then anyway, here's your video. And that was fine. So at some point you got to be like, you know what, this is good enough. I'm going to move forward anyway, because I see a lot of the opposite happening where people are like, if it's not perfect, I'm never going to let it out. And like, then you don't help people. If you do that, you won't help people.
I've stumbled over words on these podcasts more than a few times. And Dean and I, through the first 150, we've edited one episode ever. And it was because a guest thought, man, you know what? Maybe I don't really want to talk on that topic. Hey, can you guys just take that question out? And we're like, sure, none, poof. That's it. Otherwise, we've never chopped up anything. And we flubbed stuff. And that's just part of the experience. If anything, it makes you kind of more authentic and real. And people love bloopers. Love them.
Yes, yeah.
A blooper would be shooting a video on I think it was on, Instagram or my Facebook or whatever. So Christian Thibodeau saw it, and he's like, "Oh yeah." If anyone has ever heard Christian's accent, French Canadian accent, so he pops up something that he'd shared a couple of years ago, and it's a whole series of him goofing around. And Christian is this intense, jacked,
Yeah.
almost terrifying looking creature.
Yeah.
Looks like Vin Diesel on like just really gassed up. And Christian is just this goofy, sweet, wonderful guy. You see him just being playful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that probably got more traction than anything else he shared. So,
Yeah. I agree too. I think, when I do my educational videos nowadays, I tend to script it a lot less than I used to. Like there was a time when I would write, every word out in advance. And I know this works well for a lot of people, but for me, I find that like, the way that I'm talking now, I'm very comfortable. You can tell this is the natural way that I talk. But all of a sudden when I have a script for me, I'm like, hello, my name is like, I don't know who I am anymore. And when I listen to it back, I'm like, that doesn't even sound like me. So when I do videos now, I would much rather be like, okay, I have in my head, these are the points that I want to mention, and let's just go. And then I feel like it turns out better for me.
comes with experience. Right?
Yeah.
I've scripted these things for years. And then we hit a point semi-recently where life got so busy. We're just like, okay, I'm not going to worry about sitting down and spending 2 hours, like, writing out a bunch of like crafted questions and reading them off a script. We had fun with that. Anything, Dean would notoriously fumble the questions, and then we would make fun of him for screwing up words. So, and then just hit this point where we stopped doing that, and it was just free flowing, and we saw where the podcast took us, and these are always really fun. I'd say, like you said, preparation early on as you practice it, but you get to a point where it becomes much more natural when whatever.
Especially if it's a topic that well, if you're really confident in that, it kind of like when you ask me a question live about a topic that I know well, I should be able to comfortably explain it back to you without having to be like, let me look up a caption real quick. I know it, right? So yeah, to some degree, yes. But I do love the more casual, comfortable conversations.
Except the times where we've gotten you to go off in, I almost hate the word rant because people.
My ranty Sohee.
Yeah, we've gotten really fired up over some stuff in the past. I'll say to anybody, first episode you're finding, definitely go back into the old, stuff. It's all in the download stream, and I think this is the fourth time you've been on with us.
Yeah.
But and they're great, right? The first one was one of our earliest, and that was the one that went off to like this massive download spike. Mm-hmm. I feel like now there's so many more people doing so many more podcasts, and audiobook listening is exploded too. So you're competing for, against a lot more. But I mean, I don't worry about that. I just try to do good quality stuff, and our audience, I got to get used to not saying our anymore. The audience that is now here.
It's yours now.
It's all mine. It's all mine. Dean can fuck off. He's got his own. It's been really strong and stable, and it's engaged. I get a lot of messages about it on social media. So, and that's one of the reasons why I keep doing this. There's a lot of reasons that go into keeping the podcast going. I get a lot of personal value out of it. And if anybody were to ask, kind of what's the point of this, is like, fuck all you guys. I want to have a conversation with Sohee and learn myself, right? I find this stuff interesting, and I get to hang out with my industry friends because we haven't been gathering any events this year. So, and we'll share the conversation with everybody else, and hopefully they get a lot of value out of it. So one more thing that I was curious about, and let's see. Let's see, now here I am fumbling over shit because I write notes down. The saying no to people and requests and opportunities. I made a joke recently on Instagram about, you're never gonna, no great opportunity is gonna show up in your DMs on your Instagram. But, you have a massive following, you have a whole bunch of different things that you're involved with your career, and you've been doing it a long time. People have to be making asks of your time. The fact that I wanted you to come on this podcast was an ask of your time. So how do you triage those requests?
I will say that I am really bad at saying no. I am a notorious people pleaser to the point where I will knowingly, continually violate my own personal boundaries just to keep someone else happy. And then even if I know I'll end up stressed and unhappy as a result of it, I have been that way for a very long time. So that's something I'm working on. hence, part of that is what is happening in therapy, for example. However, I will say that what has helped is having, I have someone who screens all my emails for me now. Well, she's been doing it for almost 6 years. 6 years, a long time, to where there's that barrier where she knows what opportunities I would or would not be interested in. So a lot of times she'll just be like, no thanks. And I don't even see it at all, right? I don't even see like any requests, but I get sponsorship requests every day, every single day. I have exactly zero. I have zero because, I haven't found any brand that I feel like that one is willing to offer like a paid partnership, and two, that I feel like I can authentically vouch for, right? So yeah, those are easy to ignore, especially when they're cold emails or cold messages. And I'm like, you've never messaged me before in your life. This is obviously a copy and paste job. And you're just asking for stuff from me. So no, yeah, I'm very easy for me to ignore those. But yeah, there are times when you get like friends or like colleagues who not necessarily are friends, but you kind of know each other, asking you for stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I like really have a hard time with. But as I'm starting to learn that saying no is not a rejection of them, it's just honoring my own boundary, because again, yeah, it is asking for more of my time. And for me, like, at least the way that I think of my work and my business is more in terms of energy, not time. So when you're asking for an hour and a half for me to be on a podcast explaining these concepts and so on, the time, I don't really care about the time so much as now I'm mentally drained, right? And I probably won't do much for the rest of the day because that took all of my bandwidth. So yeah, I'm trying to be more and more protective of my time. So yeah, I'm actually doing like barely any podcasts lately. I'm turning them all down.
Me, obviously, but I just drain you. The rest of your day is going to be drained because
I think that actually today I'm okay. This isn't a this is a uplifting chat. But let's see what else. I'm not good at saying no, but I'm it's a practice. It is a skill. I think it's something that I'm trying to get better at. So I can say I'm really sorry, but I don't have I can't fit into my schedule. Or trying to be more unapologetic about being like, hey, can you reach out to me in like 3 months maybe, or 6 months? And at the end of the day, if they get offended, that's their problem, not mine. And trying to be okay with that instead of, being riddled with guilt and anxiety and be like, oh my God, did I make them upset? You know what? I'm learning at some point you have to be a little bit more selfish and look after yourself better. Because again, like if I'm not feeling great, if I'm not in, if most days I'm not feeling like tip top, I'm not putting out my best work to help other people. So that just, is bad news for everyone.
A couple of points I'll throw in there too. And, anytime that I'm asking someone to be on the podcast, I have a really good listenership and following with this podcast. So this is still putting any guest who's on here in front of a lot of people. Two, and I'm holding it in my hands, so this is Sohee's book for anyone who's watched the video. Eat, Lift, Thrive. So
yeah.
And I've actually had a lot of people in my world buy this book.
Because it's in 4 languages now. I
saw that. That's really cool. So
yeah, I'm pushing for Spanish too. English, obviously, Chinese, I think it's Hungarian. One of my clients in like Norway actually last year was like, did you know that your book is in this language? And I'm like, what? And then most recently French. So I said, hey, can we do Spanish next? That'd be cool. But yeah, 4 languages.
This book could be great for someone who really enjoys, is engaged with this type of stuff you're putting up on social media, but just wants it all in one, package form.
Yeah.
It's especially heavy on the exercise stuff and a lot of the philosophy behind what you're teaching people. So, if I'm going to have a guest out here, I want to promote the hell of them. I literally want you guys to go follow Sohee. If you're not already, you fucking well should be. And, I always do this too, and I do it very deliberately because I don't have the career I have if I don't have a handful of people who I love your message, your work. It's taught me a lot. A lot of my nutritional philosophy is grounded in the stuff that you've posted, that Lane has posted, and you and Lane obviously, go back. There's a lot of, interconnectivity there.
A lot of history there. Yeah.
A handful of other people. You mentioned earlier about, not a lot of fitness professionals show off, how hard they're working. And sometimes it can be a little over the top, but, I like Luca Hosevar a lot. Luca's been on here a couple of times. If you want to be reminded of like, hey, just work a little bit harder. I mean, don't burn yourself out. Luca's feed. I love Luca's feed because the guy is just an absolute relentless, diehard worker. He's a big reader, something else I do a lot of. Dean and I kind of got away from the running joke of mentioning Dean Somerset in every episode, but I'll throw him in here. Dean is someone I've actually lived in the same city as, worked for the same company, and now we're both independent contractors under a different corporate umbrella. And we're not employees, but I've had access to a lot of his continuing education in my life, and I followed his message, and he's been a major inspiration. So I try to have people go and follow his work. He's my partner in the conference that we host here every year. We had to cancel this year, and he's one of the presenters. It's like, guys, support these people because they're doing great things. So, and in your case, I love having you on here because, again, you are literally the most popular guest that we've ever had. And I love the work that you're doing, and you've had a major impact on my career to where I am. And I don't know, like, I feel like I'm doing pretty well here with everything that's been going on. So, another important point too, and it goes to this is, if you're someone who's thinking about a podcast or, making asks of people, well, I think you're going to go about it a lot better if you figure out a way to do a lot for them than you are just asking someone for a favor that's going to be draining of them.
Yeah. I think I am, because it's like, well, don't be that person who is so like, well, I don't want to bother them. So then you never reach out to anyone. But at the same time, if you're going to reach out to someone, you can be tactful about it and try to keep it more personal. I'm more likely to respond to someone's ask if I see that we have a history of some messages before, building some rapport, prior, as opposed to someone's like, oh, hey, hi, come on my podcast. And I get that a lot too. And I'm like, no, so yeah, I think it's okay to obviously put yourself out there and make those connections. And as you mentioned a couple of times already, especially if you work from home, but even if you don't, go to those live events. They're huge it's obviously not this year, but every year I try to go to at least one or two big conferences. And the main purpose is to network, is not to attend the lectures, even though I do some of them. I do go to a handful of lectures, but most of the value is going to come from the people you meet or see again, and you talk to them, you form a connection, you come up with a business idea, or you collaborate or something. There's always something that comes out of even one conversation with a colleague, right? When I was in Australia for a conference 2 years ago, one conversation with a person there, when I came back, I changed my pricing structure of my coaching just from that. So yeah, a lot of good things can happen.
Yeah, we were supposed to be in Daytona Beach this summer to go to the ISSN one, but that got wiped out too. Remember?
As far as I'm aware, it's still happening. They just moved it to September. They actually just asked me, because I was supposed to speak there. They asked me if they think I'll be back, and I said, given the trajectory, honestly, I don't think I will be. And even if it sounds like, at least for now, they're planning on going ahead with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end up having to cancel, because it is in Florida. I said, I don't feel comfortable, even if I could, I don't know if I feel comfortable going to a conference this year at all, especially in the US, unfortunately. So I think maybe just bump that to next year.
That's how I'm approaching my plans too, is, hopefully everything's settled down. I'll some stuff next year. I kept an open mind because I know Luca's still doing his Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit in October, and he's going forward with it. I think he can pull it off. But knowing that, right now Canadians can't really travel to the US, or at least we're not supposed to be. Or one of my clients just flew down to Vegas, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? But he's going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks on his way back, and I can't do 4 days in the US.
Wait, he went to Vegas?
He went to Vegas.
They let him in?
Yes. I don't know how the fuck that happened, but he booked it, planned, and he's pretty chill. He's one of those people that's kind of like not too freaked out by all this stuff. But yeah, he's gonna play by the rules and take 2 weeks to himself when he comes back. And honestly, I can't take 2 weeks away from coaching my clients, so I decided, okay, my intention was hoping things would really clear up and the U.S. would kind of get their shit together and I could go, but doesn't look like that's happening. So I got to stay put.
This year has not gone at all like I thought it would. I mean, I don't think anyone would have guessed any of the events from this year, like what is happening. But it is what it is. And I think a big part of being able to, especially from a business standpoint, stay afloat or thrive is being able to pivot and endure the uncomfortable, unpleasant times. Yeah.
I got lucky in that, I was able to assemble a home gym just a few days before the gym down. And so that served me very well throughout it. And, we got reopened after 3 months. So Edmonton has been very good relative to most of North America. We haven't had an obscene amount of cases. We've managed it really well. And then, so my gym, Evolve, where I work primarily, has done a super job of it. It's not too crazy or crowded. It's not a big commercial gym. It's more of a medium-sized athletic facility, training facility. And so I found that with my home gym, I love it. So I decided, well, I'm going to stay and coach my clients in the evening. So my daytime clients, feel like it's super safe and love it daytime at the main gym. Well, my evening clients are appreciating the fact that they kind of just come in one-on-one setting. I've set up stuff down there, and it's definitely paid for itself many times over already. And they don't have to go into a busy prime time evening gym. And then I've been able to, I got a doctor I train, right? And he's like, hey, can I come in like later on a Saturday? I'm like, sure, I got no plans. Come over and like train at 7 o'clock at night and just open my door, train him for an hour, and he goes on, right? He's been loving it. So yeah, you figure out a way, you pivot. Not everybody has that.
That's part of being an entrepreneur is like, you never know what's going to happen. And granted, this year has been to the extreme, right? But being an entrepreneur, you never know what's going to happen. So you have to be able to think on your feet and pivot. Yeah, you have to. That's part of staying successful.
And if you're someone who managed to figure it out and keep most of your income, you remember before, like when you're worried about, keeping your clients and the people who stayed with you during COVID, I don't think going forward, barring like an alien invasion, anyone's really who got through this is going to have to worry about being able to keep their clients and have a sustainable career. So
yeah, I always say like there's so many people that we're still not helping. There's never going to be a sort of shortage of demand. Like the demand is out there, right? Maybe you just need to get yourself in front of them so that they know who you are and they know what services you offer and they want to purchase your services. But we're not helping nearly enough people. There's so many people who need our help who have never heard about us maybe, or they don't know where to start, they're lost. But yeah, every time I address a seemingly, basic nutrition myth or training myth, a lot of people are like, yeah, that we already know that. But I'm like, but so many more people still don't. Yeah. So yeah, the demand is always going to be there.
Another thing that I thought of earlier, but it's worth mentioning to anyone who's trying to create content too, you sort of hit on it a little bit, but don't worry about what the more established, people, the trainers, especially the people that you kind of look up to, if they're on your social media, if you're your Facebook friends, they're going to be happy to see you doing really good work, even if it's fairly basic concept stuff, but you're not writing for them, right? You're not selling to like anything that I post. You are never going to be a client of mine, right? So I'm not trying to post to impress you. I'm not trying to post to impress some of the other people I mentioned earlier, but I suspect very strongly that you guys are probably more impressed with the things I'm doing because I'm serving an audience well versus writing something that technically, scientifically meets your standard. Meanwhile, the stuff you post is to the end user anyway, right? So I'm not trying to post something that Lane is going to look at and go, yeah, okay, he cited that study correctly, and actually, okay, good, he got the
I think
chemistry of that right.
I feel like a lot of people, maybe they focus too much on trying to impress other people with like, look at how smart I am or look at how knowledgeable I am. But why don't you, I think it's more helpful to focus on what kind of information and what form of communication is going to reach people the most. How can I get across to people most effectively? And oftentimes that's not using big words. Oftentimes that's not being like, here are the details of this study. Sometimes they just want to know, okay, what are the practical applications of whatever studies you're reading, right? And that's how, I think that's how you can reach more of the masses anyway.
Well, I'm going to let you go about your day, and hopefully this didn't degrade you in any way, shape, or
No,
form.
I feel good. I'm gonna ride this wave and keep going for a few hours.
But, no, I really appreciate you coming on. So
Yeah.
all the listeners, this is the very first of the rebrand, and I'll upload it. I'll give you the details off air, and everybody when listening to it, it's up, so you're already listening to it. And a few thoughts too is I've got to get better at this. Is first of all, I am working on building my own Instagram following. I've been doing this way too long to not have put more effort into it. So if you want, find me on Instagram at Andrew Coates Fitness. And I hope that the listeners, the people who are enjoying this, you guys will share this with other people. That way I can reach a broader audience. I can get more great guests on for you guys and help you. And, reviews, preferably 5-star versus 1-star. It's always good on iTunes. And I don't think there's much more housekeeping than that. So, and of course, I can't stress this enough. You should be following Sohee and engage with what she's doing, right?
Yeah. I'm Sohee Fit across all of my platforms. Very easy.
Very easy. Thank God there's no other famous Sohee. There's one guy, his name is Chris Vrooman, and Chris is, just, general trainer, whatever. Turns out there's a Chris Vrooman who's also a keto guy.
Oh no!
Who shares this, right? So
that can be confusing, huh?
Not a common name, and yet somehow there's two of them in our space. So yeah, thankfully there's not another Sohee.
Oh, good.
All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
I'll, you know what? I still have to get Ben on as a guest. I mean, I won't make that ask soon, but if it's something that he's interested in, I'd love to share him with the audience.
He is a wealth of knowledge.
I've actually been following him for a very long time. He puts out a lot of really cool stuff. He's pretty. So, girls, if you want to follow him, he's very pretty.
Yeah. But he's not available, so back off, bitch.
Cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate you coming on for the first version of this, and I've got a lot of big, great guests coming up. So stay tuned.